This podcast was produced using artificial intelligence and refined by human editors.
Ladies and gentlemen, aviators and explorers, welcome aboard Travel with Lara and Luca. I'm your co-captain, Luca, charting the course for today's adventure.
And I'm Lara, ready to be your cultural compass as we navigate the electric streets and serene sights of Singapore. So tell me, Luca, ready to dive into the melting pot of Asia?
Born ready, Lara, but let's not just dive in, let's cannonball into it. Today is all about the Lion City. Aren't you thrilled?
Absolutely buzzing, Luca. Singapore is a city of many faces, from its futuristic skyline to pockets of untouched beauty hiding just around the corner.
Oh, those corners hide more than beauty. Remember that little hawker stall we stumbled upon after wandering around for hours?
How could I forget? We demolished a plate of char kway teow like our lives depended on it. That's the true Singaporean spirit. There's always some delightful discovery waiting to be devoured around every bend.
Speaking of devouring, I think it was around that same corner that you tried to teach me how to say delicious in Mandarin. How did that go again?
How chi. Luca, does everything you learn go in one ear and then take a detour to your stomach?
Guilty as charged. But hey, that's why we make such a good team. You've got the language skills, I've got the appetite, and between us, our listeners are set for the ultimate guide to Singapore.
Well, we do aim to please. And today we're serving up the full experience of this incredible city-state, sights, sounds, and all the tastes in between.
Let's not forget, we're bringing the humor too. We're like the chili crab of podcasts, a bit spicy, totally addictive, and worth every minute.
The chili crab of podcasts. I like that. You may have just coined our new tagline, Luca, but back to Singapore. It's a place that's captivated each of us from the moment we arrived, isn't it?
It sure is. That skyline hit me like a ton of bricks, but in the best possible way. There's something about the way the buildings shimmer. It's poetry.
Ah, the poet emerges. Must be the sight of the Marina Bay Sands that inspires you. Though I must admit, it's like a city from the future decided to vacation in the tropics.
Couldn't agree more. And that's the wonder of this city. High-tech marvels sitting alongside lush gardens and trails. It's like Mother Nature and the Jetsons decided Singapore was where they wanted to meet up.
Precisely. And speaking of nature, remember the time you tried to adopt that monkey from the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve?
Hey, we had a connection. But enough about my wildlife escapades. What about that time you were convinced you'd met a mermaid off the coast of Sentosa?
Merlion, Luca. Merlion. Although let's not discourage our listeners from keeping an eye out for mermaids. After all, Singapore is all about the extraordinary, right?
Right you are. And today we're not holding back. We're giving you the iconic, the irresistible, the I never knew that.
That's our promise to you, dishing out a mix of well-known wonders with our own personal narratives and flavors thrown in.
And the cherry on top, or should I say the chili on the crab, is that there's no commercial breaks to interrupt our journey. It's just you, Lara, me, and the endless excitement that is Singapore.
So keep your ears perked and your imagination ready, because we're about to whisk you to a city where the sun sparkles on towers as tall as dreams themselves.
With that said, let's chat about the icons that shape the unforgettable skyline of this city in our next segment, the iconic sights of Singapore.
And when we return, I'll finally reveal if Luca ever did get into that infinity pool at Marina Bay Sands without causing a tidal wave.
Welcome to Travel with Lara and Luca, dear listeners. This segment, we're chatting about something everyone comes to Singapore for, the iconic sights.
That's right. And we're starting with the Marina Bay Sands Sky Park. You know, Luca, every time I'm up there, I'm terrified I'll drop my phone. 57 stories down, can you imagine?
I always double-check my pockets, Lara. What gets me is that infinity pool. Have you seen those viral photos of people seemingly on the edge of oblivion?
Oblivion with a fantastic view, to be honest. Now, can we really talk iconic without mentioning our half-fish, half-lion friend, the Merlion?
Ah, the mascot of Singapore. Ever noticed how it's perfectly poised for selfies? I bet it's the most photographed creature here.
And for good reason. It's like it's saying here, let me spit some water into your photo for that authentic Singapore mush.
From spitting sculptures to towering trees, gardens by the bay, Walking in the super tree grove feels like stepping onto an alien planet.
A planet where trees are decked out in lights and connected by high-flying bridges. The view at night? Absolutely Avatar-esque.
And don't forget the cloud forest. There's something surreal about finding a misty mountain indoors, and that waterfall.
Nature is artwork there. But for a different kind of thrill, our next stop must be Sentosa Island. Ever felt like there's just too much to do and too little time?
Oh, always. Between the beaches, Universal Studios, the cable car, I'd need a time turner to do it all.
Oh, to live in a magical world. For a bit of time travel, though, our next iconic site takes us to Raffles Hotel. Stepping through its doors is like walking into the early 1900s.
And they say the Singapore sling was born there. I imagine sophisticated gents and ladies sipping away.
Sipping away with Mr. Hemingway's Ghost, I reckon.
Ghost or no ghost, that colonial-style luxury is an experience of a lifetime. Now, Lara, we've had our heads in the clouds and gallivanted through history, but I believe our next iconic site keeps us more grounded.
Yes, we're rolling out the red carpet for the Singapore Flyer. It may be grounded, Luca, but it also happens to be one of the tallest Ferris wheels in the world, giving you quite the lift.
Knowing you, Lara, you'd probably try tightrope walking between those capsules.
Only if we could guarantee viral fame, partner. Speaking of fame, we can't overlook the National Gallery Singapore.
It's an artistic trove in the heart of the city. If Mona Lisa had eyes for modern Asian art, she'd find herself here.
Careful, I might just start calling you Professor Luca with your art wisdom.
Ha! Then prepare for a Luca-guided tour next time. Moving on, when the sun sets, Clark Quay transforms. Tell me, have you ever seen a river so alive with lights and music?
It gives the term nightlife a whole new meaning. You could go from dining on a riverboat to busting moves on the dance floor within minutes.
Now, for a dash of wild excitement, how about we visit the night animals at Singapore Zoo's Night Safari?
There's something magical about watching those majestic creatures under the moonlight, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's like they put on their evening attire and parade around. But you know where the real magic is? Changi Airport.
The jewel Changi. With that towering rain vortex, who needs tourist sites when you have an airport like this?
Last time I was there, I swear I could have meditated to the sound of that waterfall for hours.
And this is why you almost missed your flight, correct?
Let's not dwell on it, Lara.
All right, before Luca tells us more of his Changi Chronicles, that wraps up our iconic sites of Singapore.
Next up, we'll sink our teeth into something equally iconic, the delicious and diverse cuisine. Stick around. You might just get hungry. Ah, the delicious cuisine of Singapore. This is a topic I've been waiting to sink my teeth into, quite literally.
Oh, Luca, be ready to drool because Singaporean food is as multicultural as its population. And can you think of a better place to start our gastronomic tour than at a hawker center?
A temple of flavor, you mean? The first time I set foot in Lau Pa Sat, my senses went into overdrive.
The clattering of woks, the sizzle of frying noodles, and that intoxicating blend of spices wafting through the air.
Trust me, folks, you haven't lived until you've navigated a Singaporean hawker center. Each stall is like a different country's cuisine.
And navigating is the right word. Remember when I nearly lost you to that satay stall?
Who can blame me? But let's talk about the king of the hawker centers. Can I get a drum roll for chili crab?
Oh, the chili crab. Sweet, spicy, and with just enough mess to make eating it an experience you'll never forget.
I see people fumbling with crab crackers and wielding wet wipes like they're going into battle.
It's a rite of passage. And don't forget the mantou buns for dipping into that divine sauce.
And then there's breakfast. If you've never had kaya toast with a soft-boiled egg and a strong kopitiam coffee, have you really breakfasted, Lara?
Absolutely not, Luca. Kaya toast isn't just food. It's a comforting embrace from Singapore itself.
Kaya is that magical coconut and egg jam, right? It tastes like someone turned holidays and happiness into a spreadable form.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And let's not forget the infamous durian.
Ah, the durian. You either love it or run screaming in the opposite direction.
But Luca, the creamy custard-like texture, the unique flavor, it's nature's contentious custard.
Controversial indeed. And listeners, Lara is being polite. We all know it smells like, let's just call it an acquired scent.
And yet it's considered the king of fruits. Can't knock it till you try it, folks.
From kings to star-studded performers, Singapore has Michelin star street food. Like Hong Kong's soya sauce, chicken rice, and noodle, a flavor bomb that won't empty your wallet.
It's where foodie dreams come true, Luca. Culinary excellence at hawker prices.
Speaking of dreams, that brings us to our next segment, Hidden Gems of Singapore. But before we adventure off the beaten path,
let's savor this moment. The hawker centers, the chili crab wars, the kaya toasts shared at dawn, the debates over durian,
and the Michelin star street food that proves you don't need white tablecloths to dine like royalty.
What's next, you ask? It's time to unveil those special spots in Singapore that might not be on every travel brochure, but absolutely should be on every traveler's itinerary.
Stay tuned as we dig up Singapore's hidden gems.
And we're back, diving into the real treasures of the Lion City in our Hidden Gems segment.
These are the places you'll want your camera ready for, but which the usual tourist track might miss.
Let's start with Tiong Bahru, shall we? It's one of the oldest housing estates in Singapore, but oozing with youthful charm.
Oh, definitely. The Art Deco-style buildings make you feel like you've stepped back in time, while the indie bookstores and quaint cafes scream modern chic.
I know, right? Last time there, I spent hours in books actually, surrounded by literary works and that adorable resident cat.
And then there are the murals. You remember those? Tiong Bahru's got history painted right on its walls, literally.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, the Tiong Bahru Market, remember the hawker center upstairs? That's where I had the best chui kueh of my life.
And let's not forget Haji Lane. It's this narrow alley that's basically the epitome of hipster Singapore.
Every shop front and wall space is a canvas there. I bought this vintage camera from a shop and then posed for a photo with a mural of an even bigger camera.
Ah, yes, cameraception as you called it. Haji Lane is the Instagrammer's daydream and night's muse. We spent the whole afternoon there.
Up next is the Gilman Barracks, housed amidst lush greenery. It's a contemporary arts cluster that's as refreshing for the soul as it is for the eyes.
Love it there. The mix between the colonial barracks and the modern art, it's this beautiful collision of past and present.
Yeah, it's like wandering through history and having these moments of wow as you round each corner and discover a new gallery.
A real off-the-beaten-path art tour. And then there's Pulau Ubin, an island northeast of mainland Singapore that teleports you back in time.
Cycling through that rugged terrain, it felt like we were pioneers. Remember the lookouts with the incredible views?
How could I forget? Especially since I grazed my knee coming down. But hey, panoramic views of the quarry and the feeling of being lost in nature were totally worth it.
It's serene, and that kampong vibe gives you a glimpse of what life was like before all the skyscrapers.
Talking about nature, we can't leave out the Southern Ridges Walk.
Oh, the walk where you, my dear friend, were too absorbed in your panoramic photography and almost took the wrong turn.
In my defense, the Henderson Waves Bridge is an absolute marvel, curving and twisting like a serpent through the treetops. Who wouldn't get distracted?
And that's exactly what makes the Southern Ridges Walk a must-do for anyone looking for that green escape inside the city.
We trekked from Mount Faber Park to Labrador Nature Reserve, right? It's like a green corridor that just washes away urban fatigue.
A perfect medley of art, architecture, and nature, all in one trail.
That's our hidden gems for you folks. Tiong Bahru with its nostalgic charm, Haji Lane's avant-garde vibrance, Gilman Barracks' modern art amongst colonial ghosts, Pulau Ubin's nature escape, and the green embrace of the Southern Ridges Walk.
Up next, we're heading to the places you simply cannot miss on a visit to Singapore. Think of it like the grand parade of Singapore's must-see spots.
Speaking of which, have I ever told you about that time I nearly flew off the Singapore flyer?
You're kidding.
You'll have to stick around to find out. Join us after the break for our must-see places segment. And we're taking flight to one of Singapore's most magnificent vantage points.
Ah, the Singapore Flyer. A giant wheel that gives you a view like no other, 165 meters in the air, my friend.
Heights never fazed me, unlike someone I know. Shall we glide over your little episode, Lara?
Okay, it was just a surprise respect for gravity. But the view, it sweeps you from the Marina Bay to the islands dotting the straits.
You mean, it distracts you while your knuckles turn white? I hear it's quite the place to, dare I say, propose.
Proposing at the top of the Singapore flyer. Can we get more cinematic? But moving on from our fear of heights, there's the National Gallery Singapore. It gathers modern art within walls that teem with history.
Modern art, and I have a fascinating relationship. Like that time I stared at a blank canvas, thinking it was a minimalist piece.
Turned out, it was just not hung yet. But the gallery itself is an architectural marvel, merging the former Supreme Court and City Hall.
The merger's my kind of relationship goals. Now, when the night paints the city with its neon brush, there's only one place to be.
It's gotta be Clark Quay. The historic Riverside Quay is now a kaleidoscope of bars, restaurants, and nightclubs.
The colors, the sounds. Remember that jazz bar where the sax player serenaded you all evening?
And you, my dear Luca, only had eyes for the chili crab. Now, for a change of pace from the vibrant nightlife, imagine being circled by the creatures of the night in the great outdoors.
Behold, the night safari at Singapore Zoo. Animals roaming in their natural habitat, and the tram whispers along the path, letting us peek into their world.
The flames of the tribal performance light up the dark. It's almost hypnotic, just like the time you froze watching the fire dancer.
I admit it was mesmerizing, but nothing beats the surprise I have for you. Get ready to have your mind blown at the Jewel-Changi Airport.
Ah, the rain vortex, the world's tallest indoor waterfall. It's hard to believe we're in an airport and not some futuristic Eden.
To sit and watch the surge of water cascading down 7 stories is indeed my kind of meditation. They say the flow calms even the most hyperactive minds.
Which explains why you were so peaceful after our last visit. And people watching, the lush canopy, it makes you wish for a flight delay.
Now listeners, as if this episode wasn't jam-packed enough, stay tuned as we dive into the peculiar and enthralling weird facts about Singapore.
All right, weird fact aficionados, gear up because this next segment is all about the quirky and the curious, the wonderfully odd facts about Singapore that you never knew you needed.
Oh, and do we have some doozies for you? All right, Lara, hit me with that first weird but true Singapore snippet.
Let me fill you in on a law here that always raises eyebrows, Singapore's ban on chewing gum. Did you know until 2004 it was completely illegal to chew gum here?
I did, and let me tell you, accidentally smacking gum in a country where it's pretty much contraband, absolutely nerve-wracking.
But there's a reason for it, right? It was banned to keep the public places clean. Can you imagine needing a prescription to get gum?
A prescription? Doctor, my jaws feel underworked. I think I need Wrigley's.
Exactly. But fun fact, therapeutic gums are allowed, like the nicotine ones that help you quit smoking.
Ah, smart move, Singapore. Next up on the Weird Fact Doc is the language situation here. Singapore has not 1 or 2, but 4 official languages: English, Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil.
4. Imagine the greeting cards here. Happy birthday becomes a polyglot's paradise.
Oh, I bet. Now, have you tried waving hello in all 4? Go on, show me.
Okay, here we go. Hello, apa kabar, ni hao, welcome. Did I get that right?
Bravo. I'm not even going to try to follow that up. Let's move on before I embarrass myself. Tell me, what's one thing countries need but can't make more of, Lara?
Are we talking about land?
Correct. And you must know this little fact. Singapore imports most of its sand and even fresh water.
Which sounds crazy because, well, you'd think with all the rain here there'd be enough water to go around.
True, but remember, resourceful Singapore manages to collect and store rainwater, desalinate seawater, and recycle used water, all to keep the taps running.
Mighty impressive. Now, speaking of rain, that brings me to my favorite weird fact. Singapore is one of the lightning capitals of the world.
A shocking revelation, pun totally intended.
Lightning strikes can occur more than 180 days of the year. That's like half a year of potential thunderstorms.
Ah, the perfect excuse to stay in and cozy up with a good book. Or, if you're like me, stand at the window and pretend you're in a dramatic music video.
I've seen that. A little too melodramatic for my taste. But thunder aside, do you remember the Great Singapore Workout?
Oh, how could I forget that attempt to nationalize exercise back in the 90s?
Yes, it was like a choreographed dance routine, but for fitness. Legs here, arms there.
I know. I tried following along once and almost toppled over. Coordination is not my strong suit.
And listeners might not know this, but it was actually part of the National Healthy Lifestyle campaign.
Well, on that note, how about we demonstrate a little of that routine, Lara?
I think I'll spare our listeners the sound of me knocking over our microphones, but I do encourage everyone to look it up. It's a hoot.
Yes, indeed. Now, before we sign off from this segment, everyone's got to get their passports ready because we're about to travel through the layers of time.
That's right. Coming up next, we're diving into Singapore's rich and storied history, from its early days as a fishing village to its growth into the economic powerhouse it is today. Stay with us for a history lesson you'll actually enjoy.
And with that delicious segment on Singapore's sumptuous street delights behind us, we steer this podcast ship into the waters of time. Welcome to the history segment, where the past of our beloved city-state comes alive.
Ah, history, Luca. Singapore may be a modern marvel, but it's got a tale woven through time that could rival the most intricate of tapestries.
You're so right, Lara. Shall we start at the very beginning? A sleepy fishing village known as Temasek, which in Old Javanese means sea town.
Yes, and it's quite the transformation from then to the bustling metropolis we see now. Just imagine, Luca, if those fishermen could see their sea town today.
They'd be flabbergasted. But our little island's big leap started with Sir Stamford Raffles's arrival in 1819.
Ah, yes, the great Sir Stamford Raffles, who saw the potential in this little island at the tip of the Malay Peninsula.
Exactly. He recognized its strategic location and established this trading post for the British East India Company. And voila, Singapore was put on the map.
Fast forward a few decades, we had a booming port, a swirl of cultures, and yes, the inevitable British colonial influence on architecture, law, and society.
And don't forget the linguistic cocktail that brewed here. The melding of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and Eurasian cultures is what gives us this unique Singaporean identity today.
From a trading post to crown colony, Singapore's pre-war years were marked with economic prosperity, but all that changed with World War II.
Dark times indeed. The Battle of Singapore was a defining moment when the island fell to Japanese forces in 1942, and it was known as Sionantu.
Those years of hardship, struggle, and resilience are etched deeply into the consciousness of every Singaporean.
Indeed, Lara. But the Lion City, much like its iconic Merlion, showed its fierce spirit as it rose from the ashes post-war, rebuilding and eventually gaining self-governance in 1959.
Talk about a plot twist in history, from colonial rule to self-government and then full independence in 1965. Singapore's journey to self-determination was nothing short of dramatic.
Absolutely. And leading the way was the recently passed, deeply respected founding father of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew.
He had a vision, Luca, one of unity, determination, and growth. He believed in turning Singapore from a third-world country to a first in a single generation.
And boy, did that dream become a reality, skyrocketing through industrialization, establishing a strong economy, and creating the Singapore model envied by the developing world.
It's a miracle, considering we don't have natural resources. Singapore is a testament that a nation's greatest resource is its people.
Speaking of the people, Harmony Day. Celebrated every July, it's a reminder of the racial and religious harmony achieved through mutual respect and understanding.
The harmony among different cultures here is tangible. I mean, where else can you find a mosque next to a temple and a church?
Only in Singapore, my dear Lara. A true melting pot where distinct traditions, languages, and religions live side by side peacefully.
We've come a long way, Luca, from that sea town to a roaring lion city, proving to the world that size does not dictate destiny.
And it's this history, a concoction of cultures, wartime resilience, and forward-thinking leadership that sets the stage for the Singapore we cherish today.
Well said, Luca. That brings us to the end of this journey through time. It's incredible to think about how much has happened on this little red dot.
As they say, good things come in small packages, and our Singapore is no exception. The story of its past is as rich as its present.
True, and we hope our chat has deepened your appreciation for Singapore's storied past. I certainly feel a little more rooted to this place now.
Same here, Lara. And speaking of roots, it's about time we move from the rooted to the practical. In our next segment, we'll dish out expert travel tips to navigate this historical haven with ease.
I can't wait. From historical insights to the insider scoops, stay with us as we offer the best advice to make your Singapore experience truly unforgettable. Welcome back, Globetrotters, to Travel with Lara and Luca. This segment, it's all about how to travel smart in Singapore.
That's right, Lara. And first up is navigating the MRT, Singapore's pride and joy. You know what they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And that means in Singapore, you ride the train.
Ha! Yes, but with less spaghetti on your lap. The MRT is so clean you could dine on the floor. Not that you would or should.
And remember, folks, the EZ-Link card is your best buddy. Just tap and go. It's like magic, minus the wand and the rabbit.
Speaking of rabbits, ever tried racing to grab a seat during peak hours? It's like being in an Olympic sprint.
On that note, traveling off-peak is a golden tip. Less crowd, more peace.
Next, when to visit. Luca, do you prefer when it's hot, 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 or just regular hot?
I'd say aim for the Goldilocks sweet spot, usually between February and April. Not too rainy and just cool enough for comfort.
Comfort is relative, though. When lukewarm Luca says it's cool, pack a fan.
Hey, I'm perfectly calibrated, thank you very much. Now then, cultural tidbits. Take the local greeting. La is basically punctuation here.
Absolutely, use it wisely, folks, or you'll end up ordering a coffee la instead of a coffee.
Then there's the no durian signs on public transport. Consider it the don't wake the dragon of fruit rules.
Oh, the stories we could tell about durian smugglers. Anywho, let's not forget that Singapore is ultra polite. Respect is big here, so mind your P's and Q's.
And speaking of manners, remember the time you tried to hug that CEO after a meeting?
I still cringe. Here's the scoop. Handshakes are common, but let the other person initiate. Otherwise, a pleasant nod is your safe bet.
How about beat the heat strategies, Lara, apart from living in your fridge?
Haha, funny guy. How about we start with hydration stations, aka carrying a water bottle everywhere you go?
And pro tip, those handy little fan misters are lifesavers. Bonus, they make you look like you're starring in your own personal Misty music video.
And don't underestimate the good old parasol, or as I call it, your personal patch of shade.
I'm more of an ice towel aficionado myself. Dewy neck, cool thoughts.
We can't all have your flair, Luca. Packing tips. High-tech fabric clothing that wicks away sweat. It's like your second skin, but less sweaty.
And pack light, people. Clothes dry fast here, so you really don't need to bring that many.
Except socks. If you're taking your shoes off often, which you will, fresh socks are non-negotiable.
Absolutely. And for all you gadget fiends, power banks are a must. You'll be snapping away all day at those Insta-worthy spots.
Lastly, Lars, tell them about Chop Chop.
Ah, the art of securing your seat at hawker centers with a pack of tissue. It's like planting a flag on the moon. Or in your case, an entire roll of paper towels.
Hey, go big or go home, right? But whatever you do, folks, don't mess with the CHOP system. It's sacred.
Sage advice. It's like we give these tips for a living or something.
Next, we're taking a turn off the beaten path with a segment on side excursions. Stay tuned as we dish on the best day trips and adventures just a stone's throw from the city hubbub.
All right, we've seen the sights, we've tasted the food, and we've uncovered hidden gems. Now let's leave the main island for a bit, shall we? Welcome to Segment 8, Side Excursions.
Absolutely, Luca. Singapore might be small, but its adventures are grand, even if you have to cross a border or two. But you don't need your passport just yet, because first up is Johor Bahru, a city that's just a causeway away.
Johor Bahru, where shopping malls beckon with the promise of a bargain, and where you find that the exchange rate is suddenly your best friend.
You've got that right. I remember we dashed across for some shopping, and I managed to haggle my way into discounts that left Luca speechless.
Speechless and a touch envious, I must admit. The malls there are massive, and you go for one thing and come back with 20. But it's not just about shopping, right?
Not at all. The Arulmig Sri Rajakaliamman glass temple is a jaw-dropper. I mean, how often do you find a temple adorned in glass inside and out?
You had your nose pressed against so many glass murals, I thought I'd have to peel you off with a spatula.
No regrets. Now for a complete change of scenery, let's ferry over to Bintan Island.
Crossing the sea to Indonesia for a quick retreat? Count me in. It's astonishing how close we are to these beautiful Indonesian islands.
Warm sands, clear waters, and Luca attempting water sports. It's a sight to behold.
Hey, I'll have you know I mastered that jet ski eventually. And talk about rejuvenation. I still dream of that traditional massage by the beach.
You were snoring so loud, the masseuse joked you were scaring the fish.
Oh, come on. It was the sea waves. Speaking of water, how can we not relive the splashing fun at Adventure Cove Water Park?
Fun, yes, if you disregard your screams from the water slides being heard in the next country.
Those water slides defy gravity. But honestly, for families or even the young at heart, it's a side trip filled with laughter and just letting go.
For a less adrenaline-pumped excursion, let's mosey on down to the Kranji countryside. Now that's a whole new facet of Singapore.
Absolutely. You get to see farms, actual farms. From fragrant herbs to goat milking, it's pretty special.
We savored some incredibly fresh produce too. Remember the look on your face when you milked that goat?
I still have the photo you took. Not my proudest moment. It's as rustic as Singapore gets, showing you can find tranquility amidst the city rush.
Last but not least, the Singapore Botanic Gardens. It's not just a side trip, it's a journey through a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And what a journey. Orchids everywhere, the heritage trees, it's Mother Nature's gallery.
No matter how many times we visit, there's always something new, a different bloom, a new angle of sunlight through the canopy.
The rainforest section is incredible, huh? Right in the middle of the city, yet you feel worlds away.
It's as if you step into another dimension, all the hustle-bustle fades, and it's just you and the green.
A green that spills over into poetry. I feel inspired just talking about it. But enough about lush lawns and tall trees. What's in store for our listeners next, Lara?
Well, in our next segment, we're wrapping up. I can't believe it's almost over. We'll share our favorite moments from today, and of course, our final thoughts on this mesmerizing city-state.
Plus, we'll be giving our listeners a sneak peek at what's coming in the next episode, always keeping a little mystery in the air.
Stay tuned for whimsy and wisdom in equal measure as we close the journey, which is travel with Lara and Luca. All right, folks. As with all good things, our journey through the electric streets and serene spots of Singapore is winding down.
Yes, what a ride it's been, Lara. We've zipped from the soaring heights of the Marina Bay Sands to the ground-level delights of Kaya toast with kopi.
And let's not forget the hidden gems like the secret of Haji Lane and the tranquil Pulau Ubin. It's like we uncovered layers of Singapore that even some locals might not know about.
True that. One of my favorite moments today was reminiscing about the eternal dilemma of how to eat chili crab without turning myself into a modern art piece.
Oh, and I can't get out of my head the image of you demonstrating the great Singapore workout. Who knew you had those moves, Luca?
Well, let's just say that the spirit of Singapore got into me, and it's a bit more invigorating than my morning yoga routine. How about you, Lara? Any standout moments from today's conversation?
Oh, definitely your ice towel technique that's supposed to save us all from the Singapore heat. That's one for the books. But while we're on the subject of beating the heat, our listeners should never underestimate the power of a good, old-fashioned ice cream sandwich from a street vendor.
Right you are. And dear travelers who've been with us through this podcast, we want to hear from you too. Did any of our stories resonate with your own experiences in Singapore? Or did we entice you to put this amazing city at the top of your travel list?
Come on, spill the beans. Comment, send us your tales and tips, or even correct us if we got a little too carried away with our stories.
Carried away? Us? Never. Okay, maybe just a tiny bit, but that's all part of the adventure, isn't it?
Exactly. And speaking of adventures, we're not done yet, are we, Luca?
Not by a long shot, Lara. Our next episode is going to plunge into even more uncharted territories. I can hardly wait to share it with our listeners.
But let's save that for a minute. I want to take a second to just thank everyone for joining us. Your curiosity and wanderlust are the fuel that keeps this travel machine running.
Here. Whether you're listening from a cozy cafe or while you jet set around the globe, we're immensely grateful that you chose to spend your time with us.
Now, don't forget, if you've enjoyed our banter and insights, be sure to follow us so you never miss an episode. We promise there are plenty more laughs, facts, and tips coming your way.
And let's give them a tiny hint about the next episode. Without revealing too much, Lara, what's in store?
Well, let's just say that we'll explore a place where the stars touch the sea, time tells stories in ancient stones, and hidden wonders await.
That's quite the teaser. I'm practically packing my bags already. But until then, it's a bittersweet goodbye from Singapore, one of the most remarkable cities on Earth.
So join us next time for another episode of Travel with Lara and Luca. Until we meet again, keep that wanderlust alive.
And we'll be right here to guide you through every step, or, well, every listen. Safe travels and rewarding journeys to you all.
Bye for now, and see you in the next episode, where the unexpected is just around the corner.